wānanga, tēnā koe te ahorangi, tukuna ngā karakia kia rere.
Tīkina tūrā ngā pūtake o ngā kōrero I roto I tēnei wānanga tīkina tūrā te hautapu o ngāriki kia tau ki rungi kia tātou I tēnei wā o te tau ki apiti ki te whaiau ki te ao mārama. Tūturu whiti whakamaua kia tīna, tīna, haume, hui e, tai ki e.
Look at that, we're getting in early and starting our Māori New Year with all of the good vibes and all of the kōrero that comes with Matariki, which is a lot. And aren't we fortunate that this ancient and tapu knowledge is coming back to us? It's not new, but it is something that needed to be revealed and revitalized and rejuvenated. And we're so fortunate to be in this place where we can do that. Nō reira tuatahi, this is how we're going to work things. So Rangi Mātāmua will start, and then Qiane will do a bit of a kōrero as well, and they've thought for hours and hours about what they're going to say, so that will help enlighten us. And some of you have already sent some questions to us, but you can take the option to send questions as we're talking as well in the group chat. Engari mena kei te pirangi ke koutou kia whakarongo noa kei te pai hoki tēnā. Nō reira, this week, in terms of the Prime Minister's Science Awards, the very first Māori person was a recipient, and that is quite amazing in a few ways. And Professor Rangi Mātāmua took the opportunity to share that, you know, that's part of the issue that we're dealing with here, that this knowledge has not always been recognised. I remember, because Rangi is very humble, he said to me once, oh, this is just the knowledge that was given to me from my tūpuna. But personally, I believe he had to occur. He had to be the right person, the generations that we've waited for him to be an appropriate vessel for all of this knowledge. Nō reira, tēnā rawa atu koe, the winner of the Prime Minister's Science Award, Rangi Mātāmua, tēnā koe.
Kia ora tuahine. So am I meant to be saying something now about Matariki?
Yeah, you know quite a lot about it, so it'll be easy. So when we talk about Matariki, and I guess one thing is people get confused. We talk about, is it 7 or is it 9? And please tell us about that understanding first of all, so no one feels like they're asking a silly question.
Yeah, so just basically Matariki is Pleiades. Matariki is the Pleiades, which is the most well recorded and earliest recorded group of stars in the night sky. There is a cave painting in southern France, which is 20,000 years old in southern France, that is depicts the cluster above the shoulder of Taurus the bull. It is the first recorded astronomical reference in China. I think it's maybe about 4,000 years old as the blossom star. So, and it's known throughout the world. It's acknowledged. It has many different cultural elements depending upon where you are. The number of stars in the cluster, some people have 7. The Greeks had 9. I know Muhammad was able to name 12 stars in the cluster. There's even a reference to, I think, 16 or 18 stars being visible. A lot of different factors come into play: location, clarity of the sky, just your eyesight, your elevation, pollution. And, you know, when we talk about Matariki, Matariki is the name given to the Pleiades as far north as the Marshall Islands, all the way across the Easter Island, throughout the Central Pacific, into Aotearoa. It's got other variations, Ma'ali'i, Matari, but it all means the eyes of the god or the eyes of the chief. Now, right across the Pacific, there are variations to how many stars are visible and their association with the culture. And there is no cultural practice that is universal to all Māori. We have elements that are very, very similar, but we have cultural, regional, tribal variations, and hence with Matariki. And some areas have 7 stars in Matariki. I have 9. That's just because that was the record that was left to me. But that is not saying that 9 is more correct and 7 is incorrect, or 7 is correct and 9 is incorrect. These are just the tribal variations that exist within Māoridom. I think sometimes we can spend a lot more time focusing on these differences, whereas what we should really focus on is perhaps its observation at this time of year marks the beginning of our celebrations on New Year.
And so this is not new. If we talk about, yes, tribal differences, but almost universally, people have celebrated and recognized that Matariki is the beginning of our year.
It wasn't universal. Other places celebrate Puanga or the star Rigel. Others celebrate a combination of those both stars in their different positions. There are different ways in which it is celebrated when you align it with a lunar calendar system. So we get into some real science when you're talking about divisions of time, and you're talking about intercalation, which is the introduction of a 13th month every 3 years to recalculate and recalibrate our lunar calendar with our solar year. So there are regional and tribal variations, but what seems to be universal right across the country is Māori used stars, in particular Matariki and Puanga, to mark the beginning of the new year, and it was always in the winter. I've yet to see anyone that kind of falls outside of that approach.
And so when it comes to Matariki, tell us about when you won't see Matariki and then the rising and what we see as the new year that people start to call Matariki.
Yeah, no, there's some real misinformation out there about Matariki. People will say, oh, Matariki is visible at the end of May or early June. You'll never, ever see it in the sky at that time. Matariki is a magnitude 3 star. And basic science is it needs to be at least 5 degrees above the horizon while the sun is 16 degrees below. Any closer, then the light of the sun's going to wash out the star and you won't see it. And quite often, a lot of groups are running outside to look at Matariki at the end of May, and it's just setting with the sun, and early June, and they're disappointed because they can't see it. And that's because we're using a Western solar calendar to look for Matariki that is actually built upon a lunar calendar system. So getting kind of past the fact that we don't have to use a Western Gregorian solar calendar system when we celebrate Matariki is probably one of the things that we need to address, and we need to make sure that if we're going to celebrate it on a much more national scale, that there needs to be an understanding of when and how. So it usually sets next to the sun about Mayish, and it is going to rise in the eastern sky just before the sun, probably from the middle towards the end of June and into July is usually when it is viewed.
So I've seen predictions for the next 5 years of when Matariki will be visible. So we do have a projection, don't we? Or how accurate is that projection?
So has that come out of the book?
That one that you wrote? Yeah. No, and also the wananga Aotearoa.
Yeah, I think they pinched those from the book anyway. That goes into 2050.
Yeah.
And what it is we need to align the correct lunar phase of the correct lunar month with the rising of Matariki. So, for Māori, you don't celebrate or do any activity or any event whenever you're ready. You have to sync your self and your lifestyle with the rhythms and the natural cycles of the environment. And a lot of factors come into play: lunar cycle, tides, migration of birds, flowering of plants, position of stars. And this is when you're drilling into the science of how this actually works. And my understanding, and this is not just a tribal, there is evidence from a tohunga in the far north, Ngāi Mātāmua, who wrote in the, I think it was about 1870 something, in the Māori newspaper, that the Tangaroa lunar phase, which is the last quarter of the first month of the year, is when you look for Matariki. Wiru Mutawhai from Te Whānau Apanui spoke about that as well. My ancestor wrote about that. I have another reference when they talk about Tangaroa. So you have to wait until the correct lunar phase is in position of the correct lunar month and wait for Matariki to rise. Now, Matariki is already starting to be visible now. So, and even though it's visible, according to that calendar system, on my calendar system, you don't celebrate until you're in the right position. Otherwise, you might be celebrating in phases that are like kore kore. And you know what kore kore means? Nothing. And unsettled periods like tamatea, or even whiro, the god of disease and death and plague and illness, those aren't times when traditionally Māori, from my understanding, would celebrate. And so this year, the beginning of the celebration period is the 13th of July. There are 4 nights of tangaroa, and then you go into the 5th night, which is Otane, which god of the ocean for 4 nights, god of the forest for 1 night, Orongo, god of the gardens and peace for the 6th night, and then you get into O Mutu Mutu Whenua. So those are when you need to stop. You need to slow down and stop before you get into whiro. So this is about a week period, from my understanding, when Matariki was traditionally celebrated. It was about a 6-7 day period that they would celebrate, according to the record that I have, before we went into whiro, which was the beginning of another month.
So now things are operating around convenience so much. If you think about what a public holiday might look like, that a lot of us have signed a petition for, what do you think needs to happen for it to honour all of the things you're talking about, and for us not to be celebrating on a kore kore day when it doesn't really make sense if we're looking at Matariki being the rationale for our celebration?
I think that Easter moves around, right? And Easter's an event like that, and I think Matariki should do the same. It will move around the winter period. It'll shift from either middle to late June into early-ish July, maybe, like it's late this year, the 13th. So that'll be the period that I think you could shift it around and extend it over, you know, whatever days that fell. You know, you can still align it with the Gregorian Western calendar that we have, but as long as it fits within that period of time when it's meant to be celebrated, I think that would be, well, for me, I think that would be good. You know, you can might add it into a Friday or add it on to a Monday, or I don't know, just take the whole week.
Yeah. How about that then? That's a bonus. That's a real, as one of the kids at school said yesterday, by the way, we don't have any Māori holidays and you have lots for Jesus. So I thought that was a pretty good point. When you talk about Matariki being visible, I know you've got in your book a good explanation of how people can look for it, orientating from stars that people tend to know. How would you describe that?
Yeah, so the easiest way, I always get people is, most people know the pot, you know, those 3 stars of Orion's belt, you know, tautoru Māori, we call them. But if you're looking to where the sun rises, looking towards the east, and at this time of year, a little bit north of east, that's where the sun's going to rise, and you look for tautoru, you'll see them standing in the morning sky, maybe from about 5, just after 5 in the morning. You follow those stars, you go left, and you'll go left, and you'll come to a little bit of a pyramid shape in the sky. That is Te Kokota, or the face of Taurus the bull. And if you go just a little bit further left, you'll actually see the cluster together as Matariki. And we're lucky this year because you'll also see the bright planet Venus rising early in the morning as well. So if you're just looking below, and I think just a little bit to the left of Venus, you'll find Matariki in the sky there. So yeah, those are just kind of like a roadmap markers that you can use to pick it out in the sky.
And I actually saw you making a comment the other day about Venus and the 2 names. So tell us about Venus and how we refer to Venus.
So Venus, see, Māori, we have a number of names, and sometimes stars and planets will have multiple names, and they'll have multiple names, and actually our constellations change as well. So, you know, like Tautoru can be or Orion's belt is a back of a canoe, and then in the summer it becomes a bird snare, and in the late summer it becomes an adze, depending upon the activity. So they can change depending upon time of year and position. So Venus in the morning is kōpū. In the afternoon, it is mere tu ahi ahi. Mere to stand ahi ahi in the evening. And in the middle of the night, it is tāwera. So it has a number of names. And then you go into its positioning. So when it's low on the horizon, it's kōpū roa, because the rays stretch out across the horizon. But when it's at its zenith, it's kōpū nui. So it has a lot more names depending upon position and time of year. So yeah, one of the things I just love to drop as well is there are so many more stars than just Matariki in the sky. I mean, like, we seem to think Māori only had one star. It was Matariki, and then for the rest of the year, whereas, we named hundreds and hundreds of stars, and there are some people that hold the names of many, many stars and constellations.
Yeah, and that they come up so often in our kōrero in terms of endearment, in terms of love, kōpua rangi, and what people can mean to us. So I think it really gives an insight into whakaaro Māori, doesn't it?
It does, and I think, when we're talking about Matariki, it is connected because it's not just, I'm talking about the science, but it's also connected to spirituality, cultural practice, environment. It's actually a kind of like a structure or a framework in which we interact and relate to our environment. Yes, Māori didn't divide our knowledge base into pure science, botany, physics, whatever. Māori astronomy is astrology. So we actually ran the science and embedded it within these cultural narratives and spirituality. It gives it a richness and depth, but there's pure science in it as well. And it's built for me around three major principles. Number one is remembering the past year and those who we have lost. So it's connected to our dead, and we remember them at this time and farewell them, our dead of the year. Number two, it's around celebrating who we are and where we are at the present time. So it's about the now and celebrating the successes and all that we've been through and coming together. And the final thing that it's about is planning for the future. It's about potential, determining what our year is going to be like, planning, and really taking time to shake off whatever we've been through and launch ourselves into a new year. So it's around those three principles that the Matariki celebration is built.
And you can feel it. I want to bring Qiane in here because we're not the ones to leave anyone out, but we did sort of structure this that you both get a bit of a full-on kōrero, then we go into pātai. But Qiane, can you relate to that? Because I know I was at a Matariki celebration for our kids yesterday, and just the emotions, apart from when tamariki are doing kapahaka, but just thinking about people we've lost, everything we've been through in this last year, particularly being a rough one. Do you think that mindfulness helps us in the wider landscape of our lives to look at what Matariki can offer us?
Yeah, I think it's really important when we think about, especially that part of Matariki, the remembrance part, this season that we're in and this year, that this coldness traditionally was a time where we did rest. It was a time where we didn't have lots of mahi necessarily to do like we would in summer. And I think of there's a kura in the far north, Te Kura o Tūtū Tarakihi, where they shape their kura around the maramataka. And so instead of having the summer off, they have the winter off, because it's an opportunity for them to actually acknowledge the mātauranga Māori, our indigenous systems, and to take that time to rest and reflect. And so for me, Matariki, while it is a celebration, for me personally, I love the remembrance side of it. The opportunity for us to think about those who have passed on, what our whānau has been through in the last year. I think in particular for this last year, we've just come out of the COVID rahui, and actually if that COVID rahui was just pushed down a little bit further into these winter months, it would probably be a perfect reflection of what a Matariki holiday or public holiday could look like. And that it was an opportunity for many of us, and not all of us, we have to recognise that, but for many of us to come together as whānau, to spend time with our tamariki, to cook, for many, especially in my community, to get that mara up and running again, and put a little bit of energy in there. And a really good reflection time to look inwards and to see, reset where we are at. And that's one thing that I love about Matariki each year, is that it's an opportunity to look within. And I know, you know, just listening to Rangi talk about whiro, and whiro often being seen as a marama that, or a phase of the maramataka that is negative or connected to disease. But for me, whiro is a beautiful marama, and that it's an opportunity for you to stop and to really look inwards and to be quiet, which is a big thing for me. Anyone who knows me that's watching is probably laughing at me talking about celebrating being quiet.
Like when that? But I guess
Yeah.
I also relate to, you know, kōpui te ata and mere tū ahi ahi in the afternoon. Like, yeah, we can roll like that as women, right? What did you want to add to the kōrero in terms of women and Matariki?
Well, you know, I think especially when we're talking about slowing down and reflecting as wahine, we're often juggling so many different things. And it is that time to connect as wahine. And I think about, you know, we're talking about Matariki as the wairua of Matariki, and I think about the Māori of this time of the year and how celebrating Matariki or having a public holiday of Matariki actually breathes life into that Māori. So it's not just something you feel, it's something you practice. And obviously as wahine, that takes me right back to the creation story of wahine, but there's these beautiful connections of how we can learn about our Indigenous systems and have them returned, which only grows us more as wahine, particularly as Indigenous wahine who are living in post-colonisation, or sometimes still colonisation, and learning more about how we connect to te ao and to these practices.
So what do you think that could look like in a practical term? What would be a holiday celebration that you think would still honour the kaupapa of Matariki and be nationally, you know, have resonance at a national level?
I've been part of many Matariki celebrations over the years, probably for the last, at least 10 years I've been in, either reporting on or taking photos at or helping to organise Matariki events and celebrations. And we have regional things like festivals that have kapahaka and kai and movies on the marae. I remember being part of a few years where we would play short films at different marae around Tāmaki, which was honouring those stories and those creators in a way that they wouldn't normally be. Those things are really great ways to celebrate Matariki. Last year I met and wrote about a business, Pākehā-led business, Isthmus design company, who are already acknowledging a public holiday as Matariki for their staff. And every year they give their 80 plus staff the day off. Wow. They encourage their staff to either spend time with their whānau or to spend time on themselves, to go and get their nails done or to go and out for lunch. And then that night, the managers of that business put on a kai. They're the ones who serve the drinks. They're the ones who cook the kai. They acknowledge and celebrate the achievements of their business from the year gone. They invite their staff and their whānau to the kai so that they can thank those whānau for giving them their staff members. And then they all get together and reconnect as a business. And that was a really great example of how a public holiday can work for businesses, but can also really connect to the kaupapa of Matariki. And then, of course, from an even smaller going down again, as whānau, in my whānau, we get together for a kai. And, you know, we all live really busy lives and we're often off doing so many different things that we make a point to come together and have a kai together. And as a marae, we have been practicing going to our maunga and having a karakia at our maunga. And we're quite lucky that, you know, well, I'm quite lucky that I live next door to the marae and down the road from the maunga. And that's been a practice that we've been trying to instill in our own whānau to reconnect us to our whenua, and have a simple way of recognizing Matariki. So there's all those different levels of how we could celebrate Matariki and what a public holiday might look like in so many different ways. One thing, I did see a question come through earlier, and we just mentioned it just before we got onto the kōrero, was somebody had asked, is it appropriate to have fireworks to celebrate Matariki given it's the new year or the Māori New Year? And me personally, it's a no, because we should just look up and recognise the tohu o te rangi and see those stars that we often don't have the time to stop and look at. But also it's not so much something that we want to, fireworks is just putting more para onto the whenua. And Matariki should be a time for us to really think about how we are also responding to protecting and preserving our whenua and our moana and our awa. And really, Matariki has become the entry point for mainstream Aotearoa to learn about Indigenous systems and to learn about mātauranga Māori, and even for some to learn te reo. And so part of all of that is celebrating, recognising and protecting those things that Indigenous find important, which is our natural resources. And so we should think about ways that protect our natural resources in that part of that celebration. So for me, fireworks is not it.
And that's a good way to start bringing in our papai, because that was one of them. We were talking earlier, Rangi, about the day moving just like Easter does. So I know that we have one question here from Mate Tahora, who says, if it was to be given a holiday for Matariki, should it move with the face of Matariki, or just a specific day? What would your preference be? I mean, now you're right on in there, you know, you're Prime Minister of Science, so, you know, science works out. You can pretty much make it happen, can't you?
I don't know if it comes with that much mana, really. But if I can say, for me, I would like it to shift to align with the appropriate time. Just to follow on from the kōrero, that's really beautiful kōrero, really. I think that just goes to show that, you know, just because it's a traditional practice, it doesn't mean it can't be reapplied and play a really valuable, important part of who we are today. The principles of the celebration and what it's about are universal and timeless: unity, environmentalism, aroha, you know, remembrance, celebration. I think those, and for me, because not everyone celebrates Christmas the same way, right? Not everyone celebrates anything the same way. Some people open presents in the morning, some in the evening, some don't have any, they eat at different times, some go to the beach. So it depends upon the individual. So I never like to say, no, you shouldn't do that at that time. The fireworks is probably not my thing either, right? I'm like, But, you know, Matariki was also celebrated with song and dance. And so, you know, if people want to have fireworks as part of what they do, I'm probably hoia tō waka, you know, you do you, boo. But it's not really something that I would do.
Peter just asked a question, does it replace Queen's birthday weekend, which, by the way, is not actually the Queen's birthday. It's just she gets to choose when her birthday is celebrated, or we get to choose. It's it's actually not related to the day that Queen Elizabeth was born. Te heo korua whakaaro.
Yeah, I don't know if it replaces something, right? I don't want to say that this is more important than that. But if I can say this, that every single celebration that we have is imported. And it's imported from the other side of the planet. And it has no relationship to where we are in the world or what we do. I mean, Guy Fawkes, Christmas, New Year's, those are all imported. And that's why we celebrate them when we do. Why can't we have something that is unique to us here and what we do? And that becomes, because it's part of our growing national identity and our national culture. It's moving from being a Māori celebration to being a Aotearoa, unique to us here in this part of the world. So I'm not too sure if it replaces something. Maybe it does. But I'd like to say, why do we have to celebrate everything and everything from the other side of the planet is more important than what is actually unique and originated here.
Okay. And I think this is the opportunity, because the Prime Minister has said yes, it probably is something we need to do. So we're pouncing on that, and we're working with our petition with Action Station. I just want to quickly ask Mel's question. When Matariki rises, what are some karakia, some waiata and pūrākau we can tune into and recite with our whānau?
I think the words that come to you is probably how I'm going to say this. There are some beautiful waiata online. Karakia is something different. You know, karakia is, people are taught karakia. Karakia aren't really things that you email out, from my understanding, some karakia. So I don't usually tell people how they should pay homage, or how they, you know, recorded or earlier. It's right. You don't need the big tohunga and 50 million karakia and for lightning to flash for your thing to have meaning. You know, I went yesterday to a karakia celebration at a kura in Otaki this morning, and it was beautiful. And they did karakia, and but it was just the words that was important to them. That would be my suggestion. How you feel it's appropriate to honor your past, the ones that have passed, and what you want for the year. So yeah, I'm a little bit cautious about saying this is how you should do it, because it's up to the individual or the group how they determine.
And I think just to add to that, I was just thinking it's all about the intention. You know, if you're doing it with aroha, and if you have good intentions, it doesn't necessarily matter the kupu that are coming out of your mouth, because the intention is there. And you know, I think we also get caught up in the fact sometimes that maybe it has to be a Māori karakia or a Māori waiata, when actually it should be something that reflects you and your whānau, no matter what that may be. And so my husband is Tongan, and every now and again, you know, on a Māori kaupapa, he'll speak Tongan or do a Tongan waiata or a Tongan karakia, because that is just as important. And I think it's really about the intention. I also just wanted to quickly add something with the last partai around whether or not Matariki should replace Queen's birthday. And from a very practical perspective, I don't think it should replace anything. It should be added, because you know, we have a lot of small businesses in Aotearoa who thrive in a summer season, but not so much in a winter season, and giving us an opportunity to travel within Aotearoa, domestic travel over the winter period, can really help some of those businesses in the regions during this time of the year. And so I think it should definitely be added, and more holidays to spend with our whānau, the better, because when we are well and our well-being is in check, then our mahi is good as well.
Rangi, in particular, I guess I'm thinking about the noho rāhui whakamoho au ki te kāinga, how we've been through coronavirus, and people have seen what happened when we do slow down. And people have had aspects that have been extremely challenging, losing mahi, all of that. Do you think that we can make a reference there to what it means to actually take stock and perhaps utilise that as an opportunity as to why we might celebrate Matariki in this way?
I don't want to be disrespectful and, dishonour the people that have died because of COVID and have been ill because of COVID, because, you know, that's tragic. But if I can say that COVID really forced us to slow down and get out of the rat race that we're in. Traditionally, all cultures around the world sink their lives, into the environment. We ate seasonally. You know, we don't have tomatoes in winter, and you know, we ate seasonally. We preserved food. You know, and you preserve food and it's fat. They call it probiotics now, and it's great for you. But we've been eating like that for generation upon generation. But what it forced us to do was to stop, really come to a standstill. And that's really what happened at Matariki. It was a time of the year when things just ceased happening. We didn't have a winter garden. There wasn't an economy to worry about. we weren't bound by money and bound by this absolutely endless. See, the animals in the environment, they go from fat to thin. They go through these phases. Us, we just, well, me, I'm just constantly fat because that's yeah, because I hunt and fish in pack and save. We have severed our bond to our natural environment. And I think one of the things worldwide is we quickly saw how incredibly quick the environment was to heal itself when we stopped polluting it. And, we slowed down. We are part of this very neoliberal kind of economically driven, and it's just the world, but we're just constantly on the go nonstop. And to get that chance just to stop and just reflect, and people were out walking and spending time with your family, actually listening to your partner and kids. And for me, I thought it was absolutely fantastic in some regards. So yeah, I think the environment really tried to teach us a lesson over COVID, and it's whether or not we pay heed to those signs.
Yeah, and if we do something differently as a result. Mina Takuhoa, tēnā koe, has asked a beautiful question, Qiane. If you want to start with this, a special memory you have of connecting with your whānau and friends over Matariki.
Sorry, you cut out just as you were asking me that question.
Yeah, so some special memories you have of spending Matariki with your whānau and friends. So really precious memories you have.
So for me, my nan was a weaver, and my nan would make harakeke whetū, and I remember her weaving harakeke whetū for Matariki and us coming together as a whānau for Kai. I also remember the first year after she passed, having Matariki at the foot of Te Puke tāpapatanga hape and placing her photo on the table next to the rest of them as we had that karakia at dawn. And those things I hold really dear around Matariki. I also have really enjoyed being part of some of the other celebrations that aren't necessarily my whānau, but I really, really enjoyed being part of the movies on marae kaupapa, where we would take these huge movie screens into marae and play short films and play some of our Māori made feature films and see whānau come together and connect over that, and see tamariki rock up in their pajamas, and those things I have really great memories of as well.
It's only tamariki in their pajamas, okay, Rangi? What about you? Have you got some memories you'd like to share? Because that all brings up our ideas of, oh, okay, this is how I could see it working for us.
Yeah, one thing for me that I'll never forget, and it only happened last year actually. And I was, I've been doing the Matariki corridor for some time and going and really trying to help disseminate this knowledge. And I guess, just to share and to try and be part of the revitalization of it. But I did a roadshow with the Royal Society last year, and we did, right around Aotearoa and into Australia. And in Australia, while I was talking, there was a young girl. She was in the front row. This kid must have only been about 10, 11 years old. Beautiful young looking girl. And she hung around with her mum, who had a little baby, right after the show. And then I was signing some books, and they hung around right to the end. And at the end, the mother came up, and they were the last two. And she said, my daughter's got something to ask you. And she looked me in the eye and she said, is my dad on Te Waka Orangi? Because he'd passed away just a few weeks before. And it rocked me. I was like, wow. And I said, yeah, he is. And she goes, I believe he is. And I'm glad because I get one final opportunity to say goodbye. And I've thought about that, and I've thought about how that young girl there who believed that she is able to reconnect with her father who had died a few weeks before, and in that traditional way, farewell again and weep for him again and celebrate him becoming a star, for me, has been the most rewarding comment in my entire Māori astronomy Matariki career from a 10, 11-year-old girl in the Gold Coast in Australia, Māori girl. And just everyone, my sisters and the mum, just burst into tears. This kid just looked at me with these eyes, just like, you know, it was really moving. But just to see how people are really reconnecting with that cultural belief, I think is, for me, is just so rewarding, and I'll never forget it.
Yeah, Tāhua tēnā kōrero, Tāhua rirerire. And I think too about the wisdom of our tupuna to understand grief and to understand how healthy it is for us to bring it up again and to unlock those emotions that we have of losing someone in the last year, and how it's healthy to let it out. Rangi, could you just give people a quick roundup of why Pohutukawa does that, Pohutukawa of Matariki does that for us, and how that happens for our spirits that we've lost over the year?
So the narrative I have, and Māori have more than one narrative about where our dead go and what happens to our dead. And I just want to say thank you for your kōrero about your kuia. My narrative and my knowledge is that Te Waka Orangi is this big constellation where the back of the canoe is in Orion's belt, is the pot handle of the pot, and the front is Matariki. And the star that leads that canoe is Pohutukawa, which is the oldest star of the Matariki family. And she is a star that's connected to carrying the dead across the night sky. And that canoe is visible for about 11 months of the year before it dives into the ocean and takes our dead to the underworld. And when it rises in the correct lunar phase of the correct lunar month, which for me is the 13th of of July, the captain of that canoe, who has collected all of the dead throughout the year, we wait and we carry our dead with us and we mourn them. And at that moment, just before the sun rises, he takes the dead and he casts them into the sky where their spirits become stars for eternity against the chest of Ranginui. And we call out their names. And I've got records of many, many iwi calling out the names of the dead of the year to Matariki and to Pohutukawa. And we farewell them and we weep for them and we cry, but we remember them. And that's that grief that, you know, understand that people carry grief, and then collectively in that moment, they call out the names. And I've never been to a Matariki celebration that I've been part of where the names have been called out, where people haven't wept and cried and just felt that connection. And it's awesome because we sever kind of that bond physically, but every night we look up and they're there. They're always around us. And I think that's, for me, it's wonderful to feel that connection to them. You know, if I'm never alone, you know, I look up and there's all my ancestors right there.
Okay. And when we hear that kōrero, you quite often hear kua whetū rangi kia. That's what we're talking about, you know, that they have become stars. So Qiane, I'm really mindful of not missing anyone's pātai. A few people have asked about resources. How do we find out more about Matariki, but also about the maramataka and how we can bring that into our everyday lives?
So there's the internet has everything you could ever imagine. I would say that Rangi Mātāmua's Pukka is probably one of the best books you could ever buy about Matariki. And
in both languages.
And as a really amazing resource. I have written a few columns on the spin-off, both about Matariki and the maramataka. Cheat sheets, if you may, that are just very quick, easy to understand information, bites, to help you with both of those. Eila Hoeta writes a regular column on the spin-off, bearing in mind that her maramataka is aligned to the Manukau Harbour. And so when you do read her dates to check what the moon is doing or what the tohu are doing in your rohe. There are also some really amazing people that I always refer back to when I'm looking at Matariki maramataka tohu kōrero. We talked a little bit about Wiremu Tāwhai. He has a book, Living by the Māori Moon, which is a very good one. And Ruben and Heni in the far north have maramataka Facebook page, Mitaka Māori Living by the Māori Moon, I think is the name of their Facebook page. And then there's also the wahine that run Tuhi, that run Maramataka workshops as well. But for Matariki, I would say that check out your local council or regional council website, because often the regional councils have festival events, and on those festival event booklets or websites, there's lots of information about Matariki there. And Te Wananga Aotearoa also have some good resources, which they might have ripped off Matarangi, but there is lots and lots of information, and Google is your friend. But those are some of the places that I regularly go when I need to check in or brush up or get some good mātauranga.
And not all of us remember things freakishly like Rangi does. So when we talk about living by the stars, that's another reference that we can go to near Rangi. I know you don't want to do a kumara kōrero, but anything else you'd like to add to that in terms of resource?
I just want to, Qiane's right, there are some awesome people out there doing some great work. Heni and her partner in the far north, they put out stuff. The blogs, people like Tāmaki, who does some amazing work. He's awesome, Reriata. Really a very humble, knowledgeable kaumātua, and one of the absolute leads in the Maramataka. Liliana Clark, who is in Whakatāne. We actually have some Māori astrophysicists as well, the likes of Pauline Harris from Ngāti Kahungunu. But there is a tuhi, the work that tuhi are doing just to normalise, just get Māori names into Māori calendars, and just, they do great work. Te whānau Aotearoa, they've been for a number of years putting out things, listening to podcasts like Taringa with Paraone Gloin, and some of the resources that they put out. So there are a lot of people, and it's growing. My fave book has always been Bill Tāwhai, Wiremu Tāwhai's Living by the Moon, the whānau Apanui Moon. He tohunga tira, he tohunga i ahu mai te ao Māori, i ahu mai te reo Māori, and I kōrero ana mo tana rohe, just focusing on his area, his region, just to show how much knowledge all of our different regions had. I think the work that the blogs that Qiane writes and everyone writes, and a lot of people working in that space, it's awesome.
Okay, and actually that's a good segue into talking about rohe, and you talked about puanga early on. Te Ahiwau has asked a question. Could you please remind me who puanga's 3 children are?
Okay, Tahumate is the first one, Puanganga and Pikiarero. And those are the 3 children of Puanga and Rehua. So those are stars. And for us as Māori, stars have genealogy and children. And we were talking about the difference in practice. And I just want to follow up on something that was said before. There's a whakatauki. Waiho kia tū, takitahi ngā whetū o te rangi. Now, each and every different star is different. They're different sizes, different colors, different parts of the sky, winter, summer, and each and every individual star should be acknowledged and allowed to shine in its own manner, with its own importance and its own role. And so we don't have to universally celebrate everything the same way. That's probably what I was trying to say.
And I think you are talking about the whakapapa of things, and that it's not haphazard, that actually can inform science as well, because as you were saying, Māori science is very holistic in nature. So the whakapapa of kauri leads us to tohora, and that's why they're now looking at how tohora can help with kauri dieback. So there's insights in that whakapapa too, isn't there?
Absolutely. And then, it's very detailed when you're talking about there are stars that are connected to tohora. Funny, I've got a reference for stars, my tribe, from the middle of the bush. But those names have been recorded and associated with, you see a star in the sky and you realize, okay, I'm in this season, and you see a lunar phase. and I should be harvesting my kumara probably in the next couple of days, and then you'll look for different signs. You know, it's all of this holistic, multifaceted, interconnected knowledge base of what our ancestors and our people have always been experts in and have always been scientists in.
Qiane, how do we bring that in? Blueprint for how we live?
Yeah, our Indigenous practices and our Indigenous systems are the blueprint for living well. And the more we get to learn about them, learn about recognizing our tohu, learn about how everything has a whakapapa, and that whakapapa connects to something else. When we learn all of these things, we actually begin to live well, because we're more in tune with our environment and more in tune with those things around us. And I think that it's really important that Matariki has enabled, because Matariki has become so mainstream in its recognition, it has enabled these other Indigenous systems like Mitaka to start resurging again and becoming more sought after by those who don't necessarily have that information. And I think it's really beautiful that people are reconnecting, because Indigenous systems are a science and are the original science, and are where we should go to first before we start looking at creating new things like chemicals and all of that other stuff. Anyway, that's another kōrero.
So actually, Turu has a good relatable question as well. What kai were traditionally used in hautapu, and were they prepared a certain way? Hei a koe, Rangi? Hei a koe tātou wā?
So the hautapu ceremony is connected to the rising of Matariki, and our ancestors would cook food in a ground oven, and the name of the oven was called a umu kohu kohu whetū, or a steamy earth oven. And just before Matariki rose, it would be prepared, and they'd put food in it, and it'd be cooked. And then when Matariki rose, and to honor Matariki, they would feed Matariki and take the top off, and the steam would rise. It'd be like a symbolic offering to Matariki for carrying our dead and bringing us the bounty of the year, and and all of the treasures that we have throughout the year. And in particular, there are 4 elements that usually went into the ground. So a root crop for tipu anuku, kumara, taro, a bird for tipu arangi, like a kereru traditionally, a tui, an eel or a freshwater fish for waiti, and something from the ocean for waita, mussel fish. Now, there wasn't anything particular, like this has to be in the oven. But what it is making sure that those 4 domains in particular are represented. And a kawarafa and the rest, well, you usually get the wind and the rain from the sky. And the other 2, and it's the other 2, the oldest and the youngest stars, Pohu, Tukawa, and Hiwa, they bookend this environmental kind of system. One is remembering the past, and one is the future. So one is death, one is life, one is the end, and one is the beginning. But it's this whole from life to death, from potential to end. These are the elements and the parts of the environment that will sustain us throughout our life. And I love that kind of framework for understanding our life and our blueprint. I love that too. Our blueprint for being and living well.
And there are whakatauki that support that, ka muri ka mua, that we live synonymously in the past and in the future. And that's, geez, Māori are amazing.
Really brilliant. And the fact that knowledge has been undermined is something that we can have mamae about, and we can take joy in rejuvenating it and having this responsibility and opportunity that we have. Qiane, someone has asked, when we're talking about Kiwai Te Rangi, what are your hopes for the year ahead?
Oh, I've got quite a few. My personal one is that my whenua rihu mātau gets resolved very quickly. So that's one of my hopes. I think very important to this kōrero is that I hope that Matariki becomes a public holiday, and that we recognise this time of the year in that way. I also hope that more people become familiar and connected with these kōrero, these indigenous systems, these indigenous practices, and they really begin to understand how they support our well-being. And the more people that do connect in, the better, because then we start moving away from the Gregorian calendar and the Pākehā systems and the things that I guess the Western values. We start moving away from Western values, which is often around commercialization, commodity, pūtea, and destroying our environment, and actually moving into the indigenous values, which is connecting as whānau, supporting, promoting, protecting our environment, and living well. And it always comes back to living well, because what does that actually mean for us? And the way that we all live today is not well. It might be fast, it might make us money, it might be all of these different things, but it's not well. And so I really do hope and dream that we get to a place where we can all live well. And that is, the answer to that is all in our Indigenous knowledge.
That's a mic drop right there. Rangi, I guess I'd like for you to talk about then, should everyone feel that it's their place to celebrate Matariki and that it could become a national holiday and all of the tangata whenua, tangata tiriti and New Zealand could celebrate it?
Basic answer to that, Tuahine, is yes. I mean, no one owns a sky, you know, even though my name's Rangi, I don't own a sky. And no culture owns a sky. And in fact, what we're talking about was fairly much universally practiced right throughout the world. Sustainability was just a normal part. We're part of the environment, but we have let commercialism run away on us. And, you know, everything is driven by the economy. And the fact of the matter is the economy will not, you know, COVID is a fantastic example of the fact that the economy was just stop. And it was about survival. And that's when, you know, there will come a time when the supermarkets and the food producers and that, you know, will not always be there. That's what I'm concerned about, to provide us and to feed us. Food sovereignty is so important. Knowledge around food, knowledge around environment, I think that is the future. And so, yeah, I totally agree with the comments that have been talked about, that I think we need to find another way, and a more sustainable and a better way. And, you know, I'm part of the problem myself. You know, my life so far on the planet, I haven't been as environmentally thoughtful and proactive as I should have been. And, you know, I've had my own revelations as part of COVID. You know, you can't go around talking about the stuff and then living someone else's life, right? You actually have to live it. So, and that's the difference. The difference between studying a culture and living a culture, studying a belief and living a belief. I think we're at the turning point where it's time to start living the belief.
He wāhi pai pēr kia waiho tā tātou kaupapa, tā tātou wānanga I te pōnei. To everyone who has taken the time to be part of this kōrero, tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you so much. And we really hope, I can feel that Qiane and Rangi are really genuine in their hope that this is sustaining for you, that this is a helpful kōrero for you and will help you celebrate Matariki in a way that's meaningful to you and to your whānau. Nō reira, e te rangatira, e te ahorangi, tēnā kua whakakapi.
Te urunga tū, te urunga tapu te Māori tū, te Māori tapu te Māori, te whiwhia te Māori, te rawe te Māori nō whea, te Māori nō runga nō rangi nō nuku tū. Tēnei te Māori ka whakapiki, tēnei te Māori ka whakakaki, te Māori o ngā tipua, te Māori o ngā atua, te Māori o Matariki I tēnei tauhou Māori, kia tau ki rungi kia tātou katoa, kia puta tātou ki te whaiau, ki te ao mārama, turu whiti whakamua kia tīna. Haumi e hui e tai.
Yeah, ha mamau kia koutou katoa ngā mihi o te tauhou Māori. See you at the holiday next year. Woohoo! Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora.